So I was playing Overwatch the other day with one of my friends, and he asked me if I'd played the Spider-Man game on PS4 yet. We then talked for about 15 minutes on how good that game is. If you have a PS4 and you don't own this game, you are doing yourself a disservice. You need to get Spider-Man on PS4. But then I thought back. I could remember another Spider-Man game that everyone was crazy about. Yes, Spider-Man 2 of the Sam Raimi trilogy. This was the game. At least, that's what I've heard. I only ever had the game for the first movie, never got the second one. I think I might have rented it at one point, but I'm honestly not too sure. So, today's video isn't on that game, unfortunately. But the Spider-Man game I do remember was simply titled Spider-Man, and boy oh boy, this was a game. I had the game on PS1, and that's where I've gotten all my footage of the game, but it was also released on the N64, Dreamcast, PC, and a lesser version of the game got on the Game Boy Color. Each of these ports had a different developer attached to them too, like Treyarch being the developer for the Dreamcast port. And I had no idea that Treyarch did so many Spider-Man games. Like on Wikipedia, there's just as many Spider-Man games as there are Call of Duty games. No idea. You can't say this show isn't educational. I think Spider-Man is one of the few superheroes that people unanimously enjoy. And he's my all-time favorite superhero. I grew up watching the 90s cartoon religiously on VHS tapes that my dad had taped from Fox Kids. And if you've never seen Spectacular Spider-Man, do that right now. You can get it for like $20 at Walmart. It's so good. It's kind of weird that I like Spider-Man so much, and I've seen this with other people, because I am mortified of spiders. If I see a spider across the room, I go into full-on war mode, and it's just not pretty. I literally winced at having to put these pictures of spiders in the video. I do this for you people. I hate every bit of this, but it's all for you. This wasn't the first Spider-Man game ever made. There were some stinkers, but there were also some home runs, like Maximum Carnage on the Genesis and Super Nintendo. But this was the first Spider-Man game embracing the fully 3D world that games were taking place in now. See, this game was released in 2000. That's a full 4 years after Mario 64. So 3D games had been given time to improve in size and scope. And I think that's a reason for why this game is so fondly remembered by people that played it. Everyone says that Spider-Man on PS4 is great because you feel like Spider-Man. And while that was definitely perfected on the PS4, this was the first time we got to be Spidey in 3D. This shaped what people thought about 3D superhero games. A lot more than Superman 64 did, that's for sure. And man, this game does not hold up near as great as I was hoping it would. For sure, it's fun enough, and you have to look at it as something from its own time and not compare it to a game that's nearly 20 years younger than it. But you can't help but do that nowadays. There's that Activision logo again. I didn't realize it was in so many games I played as a kid. And this Neversoft logo creeped me out. I certainly don't think about a wormy eyeball when I think Peter Parker. But this is some hardcore rock and roll, so I'll let it slide. Oh man, they made a really cool choice for the title screen where the original 60s Spider-Man theme plays, and it has this kind of weird reggae breakdown voice in the back, but it's funky. Here, take a listen. Oh. That's not edited footage, people. That is literally what happened when I booted up my PS1. I took horrific care of my PS1 discs as a kid, so it's honestly a wonder that this game still runs at all. Oh, this menu is giving me super nostalgia. I loved going through the menu when I was younger, just looking at everything the game had to offer. But we don't have anything at the beginning of the game, so let's hop on in. The game has 4 difficulties: easy, medium, hard, and my favorite, kid mode. Kid mode is basically for kids that can't do anything on their own, making Spidey a lot stronger, so he hits harder and takes less damage. And apparently it bypasses certain stages in the game that were deemed too hard for kids. And when I was playing through the game on this playthrough, there were missions that I had zero memory of. So I never didn't play on kid mode, apparently. Whoops. When you hover over the kid mode option, different characters have voice lines saying kid mode, and I would just play on this menu for hours listening to the voice clips.
Kid mode.
Kid mode.
Kid mode.
Kid mode.
Kid mode.
There's full-on cutscenes in the game, and you can see that the model for Spidey doesn't look too bad, so maybe these cutscenes will look... Oh. That's a face model, alright. Tell me, when you see this face, do you think Peter Parker? No, you think Peter, punk, and you feel afraid that he's going to come knock on your door at 7 in the morning and just stare at you until you give him a Reese's or something. It's just not right. Aside from the models though, it's passable. Everything kind of flows smoothly in the motion, so it's aight. And if you're a big Spider-Man fan, then boy, you're in for a treat. In the first minute and a half that the cutscene covers, you see Doc Ock, Peter Parker, Eddie Brock, an imposter Spider-Man, J. Jonah Jameson, and Venom. That's basically a Spider-Man fan's dream come true. Hopefully you know your Spider-Man stuff though, which I don't know why you would have been playing this game in the first place if you weren't a fan, but there's no introduction here. You're just thrown into the story already in progress. And for those that are familiar with Spider-Man, you'll be disappointed to learn that they make Eddie Brock, and subsequently Venom, kind of a moron in this game. He's trying to get pictures of the expo going on to get his job back at the Daily Bugle or something, and his camera gets broken in the process by the imposter spider. Venom overtakes him and comes to the conclusion that Peter Parker is to blame, except he bumps into him in the crowd, and Eddie knows that Peter is Spider-Man, so plot hole? IDK, but it doesn't do Venom any favors in the IQ department. Anyways, Doc Ock's science gizmo gets stolen and taken to a room with a silhouette that looks exactly like Doc Ock's and Carnage's, and poison gas gets released into the city streets. I always played along with this when I was a kid, but now I've learned that it's because if they textured the streets, the rest of the game wouldn't look as nice as it does. So that's a neat way to stick Spider-Man on the rooftops at all times. Oh, and did I mention that Stan Lee narrates this game?
Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee here.
It's so good. So good. There's just something so unique about his voice, and there's not anyone that comes close to replicating it. Well, hey there, Black Cat. You're looking like you have a face. Platformer is not the word that comes to mind when I think of this game, but it kinda fits that description. Most of the levels involve from getting one point to the other by using your acrobatic skills, so platformer isn't too far off of a description. Spidey has all the basic abilities you'd expect him to have. Punch, kick, web attacks, and of course the ability to swing. The game doesn't just let you web swing everywhere though, and since you're above the buildings, there's nothing for your web to stick to, unless if there's a flock of birds always flying above Spider-Man, getting forcefully pulled out of the sky with each swing. You have to be close enough to an object to allow yourself to swing. You have to be close enough to an object directly in front of you to allow yourself to swing. It's a little odd to get used to, but you start to know your limitations after a while. The web abilities are really neat in combat, and can vary the game up so that you're not just punching and kicking the entire time. You use the triangle to use web, but pairing the triangle button with a direction gives you a total of 5 web attacks. Just pressing triangle gives you a stream of web for tying up enemies. Left gives you these web gloves on your fists, and I think they do more damage, but I really couldn't tell much of a difference. Up shoots these web balls. Down pulls enemies closer towards you, and right allows you to create a web dome shield that does AoE damage when you bust out of it. The story progresses kind of rapidly. You try to find information on the stolen tech from the expo, but get wrangled into stopping a bank heist in the process. This serves as a basic tutorial level, going over pretty much everything you'll do in the next levels in the game. There's hostages in the bank that you have to protect, and I never saw this as a kid, but I apparently took too long saving the hostages, and so one of the hostages died, and they just faded out of existence like they're Goku on his way to train with King Kai. So that was jarring. And there's this part in the bank heist where you have to stop a bomb from exploding by throwing it into a safe, and the music really kicks it into overdrive here.
They're messing with us. Start the timer on the bomb and take out all the hostages.
I think the bassist had a little too much Mountain Dew before laying down this lick. There's also really cool comic book covers for each chapter in the game. This was never an actual comic, so it's nice to see this kind of care put into a game like this. The next level where you race to the Daily Bugle to stop Scorpion from axing JJ was in the PS Underground 2000 demo disc, and I played this endlessly before I owned the game. There's a bar at the top of the screen showing how close Scorpion is to getting JJ, which doesn't make sense now that I'm a 24-year-old with a college degree. They are literally in the same room. Did they get caught up in an intense game of Quiet Mouse Still Mouse? One good thing is you get to hear the back and forth banter between Scorpion and Spider-Man, which they're not in the same room, so try to explain to me how that works. Speaking of the banter, Spider-Man is constantly quipping in this game, just like Spidey's known for. He's not overly funny in this game, but it's still fun. It spices up the combat from time to time. Throughout most of the game, the police are on the hunt for you because, supposedly, Spider-Man stole something, which if they had any brains, they would know that Spider-Man wouldn't do that, but it happens anyways. There's even a level where you're chased by an attack helicopter, which involves them blowing up an abandoned building while looking for you. Come on, guys. Even if it's abandoned, why? This is excessive. I don't even have words for this. Watch this cutscene where Black Cat and Spider-Man are looking for Rhino.
We're too late. That makes 2 major technology heists in 2 days.
That leaves one question. Where's Rhino?
Cat!
I have the same reaction when I see a cat, Spidey.
Gotta help me. They're not really paramedics.
Well, no duh, they're not paramedics. Take a look at them. I don't think Shirley and Margaret have ever been to medical school. The game is genuinely funny from time to time.
Parker hates it when I get the drop on him.
I hate it when he gets the drop on me.
Come on, that's just funny. Oh, and the funky bass player is back in the sewer level. Hit it, Ricky. You track down Venom after what seems like forever, and they actually acknowledge Venom knowing that Peter is Spider-Man, and the imposter couldn't be him because they bumped into each other at the expo. So if you left a comment on the video pointing this out, thank you so much for commenting on my video. Stick around, I've got string cheese for everyone. After deciding to team up to take down the thief, you run into these symbiotes running around, which means that Carnage is involved in the whole plan. Spider-Man tracks down the imposter, who turns out to be Mysterio, and gets taken down, and pummeled into revealing the evil plan. Jeez, Pete, you didn't have to bust the fishbowl. That's a little harsh by even Batman's standards. Okay, maybe not. Eventually, after shutting down the poison gas, you learn that those silhouettes that looked just like Doc Ock and Carnage were Doc Ock and Carnage. Wow, major plot twist.
That was sarcastic.
And after 2 kinda ho-hum boss battles, you finish the game. Or at least, that's what you think. The Carnage symbiote flees from Cassidy, but bonds with Doc Ock, creating a completely new villain for the game named Monster Ock. Wow. You guys really broke the bank with that name. You don't actually battle Monster Ock. You have to just run away from him and get out of the villain base before Monster Ock catches you. And this was so tough. I never beat this level as a kid. I could only watch the final cutscene. But I did it today. Ha ha ha! Take that! I am invincible! Speaking of invincibility, I used a cheat code about halfway through the game for invincibility. This game is way harder than I remember it being. I did half of this playthrough on normal difficulty, and I can only imagine what hard is like. This was an absolute nightmare. I swapped over to kid mode just so I would enjoy my playthrough of this. The cheat codes are really fun too. You can unlock literally everything with a code, and it really gives the game more replayability. The biggest thing to unlock is the alternate costumes for Spider-Man. There's some awesome ones here, but we all know that the symbiote suit is the best one. And they all have something added to them. The symbiote suit never runs out of web fluid, while others have increased strength. Holy cow, I didn't even mention the web system. This isn't your Raimi Spider-Man. This one has a limited supply of webs, and you use a fraction of it every time you web swing. Some web abilities even use more web than others. You can find web refill packs hidden around New York, which makes about as much sense as Bayonetta being in Smash Brothers, but it still exists anyways. So it's whatevs. There's also classic comic book covers that you can find, and before the internet, this was an awesome little gallery. You can find these comics hidden in the game throughout the levels, but I only found 2 or 3, and the cheat codes unlock all of them. But getting to see all these classic comic book covers shows how much they wanted this to be a celebration of Spider-Man. There's also a what if mode in the game, following the what if line of comics from Marvel Comics. It doesn't actually change the game any, but there's a few cameos from other Marvel characters and other fun stuff added to the playthrough. I'm going to put a link to a video in the description that goes over most of the changes if you're interested in them. Spider-Man is an interesting game. For its time, there's nothing like it. But now, we've had superhero games be perfected with the Arkham series, and even Spider-Man with Spider-Man. It really doesn't hold up as well as I was hoping. It's a ridiculously tough superhero game for the PS1. It's not on the Superman 64 level of difficulty, where it's unfair, but man, this probably caused a few tears back in the day. If you have any childhood memories of this game, you would probably enjoy yourself for a little bit, but ultimately, you're better off playing the PS4 game. Hey guys, what did the spider say when his friend got run over by a rhino?
Cat!
Thank you so much for checking out the channel today. Let me know in the comments below if you have any memories with this game. While you're here, check out a few other videos on the channel, and make sure to give me a follow on Twitter and Twitch. I typically post video updates on Twitter, and it's always a good time on Twitch interacting with people. Until next time, see you later.